Some of you may be old enough to remember it was excuse me, before my time. But some of you may remember the days I'm told that air conditioning was not ubiquitous, that people didn't have them in their homes, but the places that people went, I'm told, were movie theaters. It was a way to get away from the heat, to watch a movie. It was a nickel and you got popcorn and you cooled off. Here, no popcorn, no money, but you get spiritual nourishment, which is even nicer, and it's so wonderful to see so many of you here. It's, I think, the largest number of people I remember seeing ever on the July 4th weekend, and I think it's all because of Sara Anderson. That's why, and for me, okay, I was going to mention maybe because of my sermon, but I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. Welcome. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here. We're going to celebrate to B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow, which makes it all the more wonderful. We continue with Shalom Aleichem. You'll find it on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Barchuni leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech, Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh, 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 Baruch Hu.
page 20 with Lecha Dodi. Welcome those in our midst, our mourners, with the words that go back a couple thousand years to the ancient temple. Hamakom yinachem etem, b'tosh she'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God's presence comfort you among all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Continue the Baruch Hu, page 28.
מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני.
Baruch Shemo.
המרי ורבים. אהבת עולם, בית ישראל עמך, אהבת תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת, על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
Page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
The Micha Mocha is found on the top of page 40.
מי כמוך נהדר בקודש מלפנינו, מלפנינו ומאחרינו. השכיבנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לשלום. והעמידנו, מלכנו, לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך, והושיענו למען שמך, והושיענו והגן בעדנו, ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו, כי אל שומרנו ומצילנו אתה, כי אל מלך חנון, חנון ורחום אתה. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו מעתה ועד עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת
occurs to me that the prayer book is very much like life. Life is a series of emotions, ups and downs, and they're often at the same interval. And it occurred to me as I turned to page 253, where I'll ask you to turn, that's the prayer for healing, that's the prayer for the sick, the Mishaberach. So we go from reminding ourselves that God created the Sabbath with lots of joy to reminding ourselves that there are people whose lives may not be filled with joy at the moment and may be dealing with issues. And with them in mind, we say a prayer together, the Mishaberach, the middle on page 253. Silent Amidah is found on pages 48 through 62. We ask that you rise, and when your prayers are completed, please be seated. Pages 48 through 62. Just a brief thought before I ask you to join me in a prayer for the United States. We've just celebrated July 4th, Independence Day, and I wanted to share just 3 very brief thoughts about the fact that we celebrate our nation's independence. The first, I just want to share with you what I know many of you feel, that it's great to be an American. Obviously, our country can always improve, and we will always strive to be better, but we shouldn't forget we live in the freest republic in the history of the world. And with whatever issues we face, racial tensions or not, we shouldn't forget that this is the least racist, multi-ethnic country in the history of the world, which is why everybody from all different walks of life and all different colors want to live here, and I don't blame them. And with that in mind, I want to acknowledge the men and women of the military, some of you indeed who are here this evening, who made our country free and keep it free, some who sacrificed much in their lives, were deeply wounded, and indeed parents who lost beloved children. We owe them all a debt of gratitude. The second thought I want to make is that it's great to be an American Jew. I need not tell any of you of the history of our world and the pogroms that Jews faced in almost any country on almost any continent where we've ever lived. And I don't have to tell you anything about what's going on in Europe these days. I read today a very, very troubling expose of what's going on in England and why Jews are thinking of fleeing England and fleeing, indeed, France. But no Jews are thinking of fleeing the United States for oppression. And we're fortunate and we're blessed to be American Jews. And the third brief point is this. All of this needs to be conveyed. Every year we Jews have a Passover Seder and we read from the Haggadah. We read it for one reason. We abstain from chametz, all of this for one reason, to identify with our ancestors who left Egypt and to remember how fortunate we are to be free. To remind us that God redeemed us with an outstretched hand, with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. The Seder is our ritual of conveying the value of freedom. And it's up to us to remind every generation of Americans, every generation again and again, how unique America is every year. Fireworks are great, but they don't do a heck of a lot to convey the values of America. We need an American Seder of sorts. As parents, as grandparents, as teachers, we all care about our children knowing what is wonderful about Judaism and transmitting Jewish values. Let's also care about our children knowing what's wonderful about America and translating the wealth of American values. So happy Independence Day, America. And thank you for the privilege of living in this country and for being an American. And with that, I ask you to join me in reading the prayer for our country on page 258. Together, O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who are. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen.
Israel, Reshit Smihat, Geulah.
Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel. Bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. Some years ago, the Los Angeles Jewish Federation created something called Shabbat in a Box. They still are around. They're a series of questions that you can take out at any point, but it's especially nice to take them out at the Shabbat table and discuss them at the meal, at your meal. So it got me to thinking. That's not very good English, is it? Anyway, it got me to thinking, that's what happens when you don't write out your work, about some of the Jewish teachings which have shaped my life over the years. And there are, of course, many, just like there are many for all of you. But I decided to share 3 with you, which have been particularly important in shaping my thoughts and the way that I aspire to in my life, in the hope that you'll find them equally meaningful on a daily basis. So here's the first of the 3 teachings that I've learned from our tradition that have really affected me. The first is I learned from the Talmud. It's not the thought that counts, but the deed. In other words, what matters is our behavior, not our thoughts, not our feelings, not our emotions, not even our intentions. There are 613 mitzvot, and with but just a few exceptions, almost all of them have to do with how we act. Almost none of them have to do with our emotions. A few of them do, but overwhelmingly, they're all about how we act. We're supposed to give tzedakah whether or not we feel like it, because the person in need will be helped. We're supposed to fast on Yom Kippur, whether or not we're in the mood for it. No one's usually ever in the mood for it. But we fast on Yom Kippur because we fast on Yom Kippur. It's the right action. We're supposed to honor our fathers and our mothers, even if you don't feel like it all the time. Because Judaism is about obligations, not about feeling. The notion that what we do is more important than how we feel, by the way, is liberating, because it actually frees you from feeling guilty about thoughts that may be less than pure. I'm always reminded of the interview that President Carter did in 1979 in a magazine which isn't around anymore. I never read it. It's called Playboy. I never looked at it. I never saw it. By the way, I will tell you what I learned. Elie Wiesel was interviewed by Playboy magazine, and in an interview with him, I said, "Did you read it?" And he said, "I did read it." And he said, "And then I went out of my house, I put the magazine in a paper bag and threw it in a public trash can at 63rd and 2nd Avenue. He didn't even want to be seen with the magazine. Anyway, President Carter acknowledged at that juncture in his life that he actually lusted, you remember this? He lusted in his heart for other women. By the way, some Christian friends of mine were very upset that he lusted in his heart for other women. Jews, lust schmust. The question is, did he act on the lust? You see, if it's the thought that counts, we would all be in trouble. Because all of us at times may have lusted for things, whatever they are, which aren't so terrific. But what the Talmud is teaching here is that it's our deeds that count. Whether or not we act on them for good or bad reason, it's what we do that is far more important than how we feel. The second lesson that I learned was the most difficult one for me to accept. I've learned that there's no correlation between education and moral behavior. In other words, you can be very well educated and not very decent. And the reason this was difficult for me to come to realize is that Jews are known as the people of the book, right? We value the book. We value education. We invest in education. We want our kids to get an education in whatever they can. If you ever take a trip to universities, you will see a disproportionate number of Jewish surnames that have funded many of the programs, have funded many of the institutions, many of the buildings, and the like. We lend a disproportionate amount of money to educational programs, and yet one can be deeply educated, have a great deal of knowledge, and not be very good. There's no correlation. It's true not only for the individual, it's true on a societal level. And if there's any group that should know this, it's the Jewish people. Germany was the most educationally advanced and technologically advanced society of its day in the 1930s and 40s, and perpetrated one of the greatest evils in world history. And some of the most vitriolic, hate-filled, anti-Israel words today are coming from our universities, sadly, from the most well-educated. Don't misunderstand me. We should take advantage of every educational opportunity. Don't leave here thinking that I'm suggesting otherwise. But let's also not live under the illusion that it will make us better human beings. And I'll take it a step further. Not only is there no correlation between education and moral behavior, there's no education between being artistic or culturally advanced and moral behavior. Germany gave us Beethoven and Bach, Handel and Strauss, Mozart and Wagner. It was a country deeply steeped in the arts, and it also brought us the Shoah. An individual can love the arts. You can be highbrow, deeply articulate, highly educated, intellectual, very sophisticated artistically, and do great evil. We should be educated. We should be advanced artistically, again, but understand it doesn't necessarily make a better human being, because the visual is seductive and can lead us down a bad path. You know, Judaism realized that, and here's where I learned it. We just read it. The whole purpose, we wear the tzitzit, right? We wear the talit for one reason. We should look at the mitzvot, we should look at the tzitzit and be reminded of the mitzvot, because as it says in the Torah and in our prayer book, just taken from the Torah, don't follow your eyes or your heart, because it can lead you astray. The visual is seductive. And you know, by the way, there's a beautiful teaching. I tried to find the source for this, but unfortunately I couldn't. But it's very, very powerful. You know how the Greeks worshiped the body, right? Zeus and et cetera, et cetera. There's a beautiful teaching. To the Greeks, the beautiful was holy, but to the Jews, the holy was beautiful. To the Greeks, the beautiful was holy, but to the Jews, the holy was beautiful. Pursue beauty, pursue the arts, pursue education, but it doesn't necessarily make a better human being or a better society. Now let me tell you where I learned all this. From the first thing that I shared with you about being the people of the book. We are a people of the book, but the book is the Torah. The book is the Bible. The study of Torah is considered the most important study. Not the math book, not the history book, not the science book, not the political science book. They're important. They teach knowledge. But knowledge is a tool. It can be used for good or for evil. And I fear today that people have far more knowledge of math books, science books, history books, and Shakespeare than they do of the book, the Torah. And finally, my third thought that I'd like to share with you that has really affected my life comes from Maimonides. I found it beautiful, life-affecting, honestly. Maimonides teaches us that the world is in a perpetual state of balance between the good and the bad, and that every act we do, that's the key phrase, every act we do influences the world. Sometimes we do things that we know have big consequences. But Maimonides is teaching us that every act, even the acts that appear to have little significance, are important. I've mentioned this example in the past, but I want to share with you a new take on it. In the old days where you'd wait in line for a movie, and you see the sign that says $15 adult and $12 for children 13 and under, and you're there with your 14-year-old child, and you walk up to the ticket counter and you say, 1 adult and 1 child. And you did it because you managed to save $3, right? But of course, for the $3, you've made a statement to your child that it's okay to lie, it's okay to cheat. But of course, today we buy them online overwhelmingly, right? So no one's gonna know. But here's my thought about that. You know you did it. What you have done, what we have done when we do things like that, is we have taken ourselves down a notch. We have damaged our souls. Driving is a very good way to measure a society because driving is anonymous. If you come to a 4-way stop and it's not your turn, and you don't let the person go, no one's going to know except you, but you've damaged your soul. If you cut in at the freeway at the last minute because you don't want to wait in line on the 101 transversing into, the 405 going south-north to the 101 that goes that way, by the way, there's no question whoever designed that was an anti-Semite. I mean, they knew people had to go to the valley from Stephen Wise Temple. But if you cut out at the last minute, other than an emergency, obviously, no one's going to know it except you, and you have damaged your soul. Everything we do in life counts. God knows, but we know. The kind word that we say, standing for our deals, fighting for what we believe in, knowing that everything we do influences the world in some way, is very beautiful and indeed empowering. So those are my 3 thoughts which have influenced me and I hope in some way will influence you. What we do is more important than how we feel. There's no correlation between the arts, education, and moral behavior. You can be great in all of them, or you might not be. And the importance of every act, not only how it impacts others, but how it impacts our own integrity, our soul. There are 3 simple, but I think in many ways profound Jewish teachings which can bring more Judaism into our daily lives and I hope make our world just a little bit of a better place. Shabbat Shalom. Thinking of better places, we have so many wonderful things happening in our congregation, but one of them is an opportunity to say a blessing for a couple who's about to be married. So I'm going to ask my endeared colleague, Rabbi Ron Stern, to join us on the bima.
In 1998, my family moved to Stephen Wise. And we were very fortunate in that we were part of a group of families and kids and parents who had been a part of the synagogue for many years and welcomed us into their lives, into their homes. And they've stayed a part of Stephen Wise for these 20 years. And the way it works when you're with a particular age group, you know this if you've ever done this, is you have like waves where it'll be the bar mitzvah years, and then everybody's going to bar mitzvahs all year long, or 2 years, and then it's the graduation years, and then it's the graduate degree years, and then it's the weddings. We're in the weddings phase now. So 20 years ago, Jonathan Brown and my son became the closest of buddies. Jonathan and his family have been a part of our lives ever since. And about 9 years ago, Jonathan brought Danielle into all of our lives. And we celebrated her presence, and she was an instant fit with the whole larger group. So it's an unbelievable, not just privilege is not the right word, it's an unbelievable expression of community and all the ties that make synagogue life and connection to community so much more meaningful, because we share those events. That I get to invite Jonathan and Danielle to the bima. Come on up. Jonathan, I remember when he was bar mitzvah. He had a beard then too. No, he didn't. These guys met and were just knew that they were destined to be together, and we'll be celebrating their wedding next weekend, and it's an incredible experience. So these are words that are on paper, but they pale by the feeling that I have, in the face of the feeling that I have in my heart for you two, that you found each other, that we get to share this with all of you and your families, and to really rejoice with you in front of the congregation. So these words say, Kol sason v'kol simcha. Next time you're going to hear that is the last of the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings, the voice of gladness and the voice of joy. That's what we feel, because we rejoice with you on this Shabbat as you prepare to enter a chuppah, your own wedding canopy. And what we hope for you is that you know much joy and gladness throughout your decades together, and strength of spirit for times of sorrow and times of hardship. And you've been through both, and you know how important it is for each of you to have the other at your side. We pray that your new home will be filled with delight, with laughter, with unending devotion for each other, with family, with friendships that endure throughout your lives. May you continue to build a Jewish home based on ma'asim tovim, on acts of goodness, and may you be blessed with happiness and with love and with peace. And it's with that spirit that I say the words of the Shehechianu, giving thanks for the years that we have known each other, Jonathan, for bringing Danielle into our lives, for celebrating with your family and their friends and all of us at this moment. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Praise you, Adonai, source of all that we are, all that we can be, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this wonderful, wonderful moment. Mazal tov. Mazal tov. Thank you. Of our lives, Maestro K. We are also blessed to have 2 young people celebrating their B'nai Mitzvah tomorrow. First, Francesca Tyberg. Hers is in the morning. Come on up, Francesca. Francesca is here. If you are part of Francesca's family, would you just raise your hands? If you have traveled more than 1,000 miles to be here, would you raise your hands? The Spanish speakers don't understand. There are people from Argentina, from Guatemala, from the East Coast. So they all came in for you, Francesca. And now Aiden Danish Rod, would you come forward? You're lucky. Most of your family lives in town. So Aiden's doing it, he's doing it Persian style. We have a reading on Saturday, and then 3 weeks later we have a party, but everybody's in town, so hundreds of people will be there to celebrate with you. So both of you get to lead us in the Kiddush. The Kiddush is in your prayer books on page 5. Please rise.
Shabbat
grape juice. You can drink. Sara. The Aleinu is on page 282. I told Jonathan that I would officiate at his wedding on one condition, that is that we went out for drinks at some time before, and he told me all the things that he did with my son that I didn't know about while they were in high school. He wouldn't go for it, so I had to do the wedding anyway. You received a bulletin when you walked in here that talks about all the wonderful things that are going on in temple life. And particularly want to call your attention to an article written by my colleague, Rabbi Sara Laufer. It's a beautiful piece that captures the meaning of this particular time of year, this time between the breach of the walls of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple that we recognize, event that happened 2,500 years ago, but for the Jewish people, it's like yesterday. So we remember it and we recall both the terror it brought on us and also the fact that it induced an incredible change and resiliency in our people that allowed us to become who we are today and has really what served to transform us into becoming the Jewish people. When we gather as a community, we also, of course, remember not just collective mourning that Tisha B'Av captures on July 22nd, but also the moments of mourning for those who are personally feeling that in our midst. So I'd like to recognize you, if you are a mourner, with the following categories. If you're in the first 30 days of mourning for a loved one, would you please rise? If you're in the first year of mourning for a loved one, would you please rise? If you're observing the anniversary of death of a loved one, would you please rise? A yard site or just go ahead. And now we stand beside you in solidarity as we join with you as you recite the Kaddish. It is on page 294. Yitgadal v'kadash shemei Rabba v'alma divrach chiyutei v'yamnit malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael b'galau v'zman kariv imru amin. Yehei shmei Rabba mivarach le'olam ol'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaler v'yithalal shemei l'kudisha b'reichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'miram bi'amal v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. This prayer that's so connected with mourning for us ends with a wish for peace. And what perhaps the inspiration that can come from this is that we are just, when we gather to remember those we love, we're not merely remembering lives, but we're remembering also the purpose that our loved ones carried into the world. And if we can rededicate ourselves to that purpose and renew ourselves in the memories, then we can continue the work that they began. And so we end our service with Oseh Shalom, but I'll read the words in English as a way of ending also our recitation of the Kaddish. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, to which we say, Amen. Last two lines, Oseh Shalom Bimromav in the Hebrew, and the transliteration is somewhere in the book. First one to find it gets to eat the first bite of challah. I'm not sure where it is. Bottom of page 294.
Oseh Shalom Bimro